Part 5. The Council of Nicaea. When the Bible was edited and the truth filtered. What if I told you the Bible you know today was the result of politics, power plays and missing pages? And what if the version that kept the full truth was in Ethiopia? Let's rewind time about 1,700 years back to a game-changing moment in the history of Christianity, the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD. This is where Christianity got political and the Bible started to get sliced up. But first, why was this council even called? The Roman Empire was falling apart spiritually. By the early 300s AD, the Roman Empire was a mess. Religious chaos, too many gods, too many sects. And then Christianity started to rise fast. But it was divided. Some believed Jesus was divine, others believed he was just a prophet. Some had dozens of Gospels and scriptures, others only followed Paul's letters. So, Emperor Constantine, a man who wasn't even baptized, called a global religious summit to clean up Christianity and make it a tool of empire. So, let's enter the Council of Nicaea. What happened at the council? Well, you can think of it kind of like a board meeting, but for deciding religious truth, over 300 bishops and theologians gathered together. The goal? To decide what Christians must believe and, what should be removed. The debates got really intense. Some accounts even describe fistfights over theology. In the end, the divinity of Jesus was actually voted on and affirmed. The Nicene Creed was created, which became this declaration of approved belief. And several Gospels and scriptures were declared heretical and banned. Now let's talk about the books they didn't want you to read. After Nicaea, a wave of purging began. Books like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Shepherd of Hermas, the Apocalypse of Peter, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Infancy Gospels, which describe Jesus' childhood, were all labelled non-canonical. Not because they weren't valuable, but honestly, because they didn't fit the new imperial narrative. They revealed things like, Jesus' life between ages 12 and 30, what people sometimes call the missing years. There were hidden teachings about spiritual power, love, and divine knowledge. And all of this pointed to a more mystical African and Middle Eastern context of early Christianity. So what happened? Well, they were buried, burned, forgotten, but not in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church basically said no thanks. While Rome was, cleaning house, Ethiopia was preserving. The Ethiopian Church didn't attend the Council of Nicaea, and honestly didn't feel bound by Roman imperial decisions. They kept the original collection of texts, holding on to the books of Enoch, Jubilees, 1st Maccabean, also known as Maccabees, and more. Their Bible wasn't shaped by power politics, it was shaped by faith, tradition, and legacy. That's why the Ethiopian Bible has 81 books, compared to the 66 in most Western Bibles. And guess what? Some of those extra books offer a glimpse into Jesus' life that's rarely taught today. What did these missing books reveal? Let's take a peek. The Book of Enoch, talks about angels, the Nephilim, these giant beings and the whole spiritual world. It even mentions a Messiah who will rule in righteousness. And get this, it was actually quoted directly in the New Testament in the Book of Jude. So why was it eventually cut out? Well, it's because it gave too much spiritual knowledge and it was heavily linked to Africa and ancient mysticism. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas describes Jesus' childhood, where he's performing miracles and honestly speaking divine truths at just 5 years old. It really shows his divine nature from a super young age. But why was it banned? It's because basically it made Jesus look too powerful and honestly not entirely safe or tame. The Book of Jubilees retells Genesis and Exodus, but with way more detail and cosmic insight. It speaks about fallen angels, spiritual timelines, and, these hidden laws that most people never hear about. It didn't align with the Roman Church's goal of simplified, controllable doctrine. Why did this shake the Western world? When scholars and archaeologists rediscovered the Ethiopian Bible and its sacred scrolls, the reaction was, honestly, explosive. People realized there was a whole other side of Christianity. Some of the books were actually older than the ones in King James. The African church had preserved what Europe discarded. It was like uncovering a spiritual time capsule hidden in the highlands of Ethiopia. Western institutions were honestly stunned. And, many refused to acknowledge it fully. Why? Well, because it challenged centuries of religious control. Why the Ethiopian Bible was rejected and silenced. Let's be honest here. A Bible from Africa, with more books featuring a black queen, an African Jesus, and a hidden spiritual legacy. That was just too much for colonial powers, missionaries and theologians. So it was labelled as heretical, dismissed as not scholarly and honestly hidden from church teachings. It was left out of Western seminaries too. But the truth? The Ethiopian Bible is actually one of the oldest and most complete versions of Scripture in existence. And for generations, Africans have used it to preserve a truth the world just didn't want to see. So let's just recap what we now know. Ethiopia actually had the Bible long before Europe ever introduced Christianity to Africa. They managed to preserve the books that were removed in Europe and America, and their Bible includes some really powerful insights into Jesus' early life, the spiritual realm, and even human origin. It reveals a deep link between African kingdoms and biblical prophecy. This isn't just about religion, it's really about history, power, and identity. And the real question is, why don't more people know about this? In Part 6, we'll explore the content of the banned books themselves. What exactly did they say about Jesus' missing years? What spiritual truths were kept from the masses? And why are so many people turning back to the Ethiopian Bible now? Trust me, you won't want to miss it.